A special board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Monday, April 15th, 2024, beginning at 5 p.m. in the boardroom of the Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District located at 2000 North 23rd Street in McAllen. At this meeting, there may be discussion and action by the board on items and subjects listed as follows. Items listed on this agenda may be taken in order other than as shown on this agenda. Item 1, call the meeting to order. I have done so at 5 p.m. Item 2, public comments.
Here are the public comment procedures. Number 1, individuals who wish to participate during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment shall sign up at McAllenISD.org at least 1 hour prior to the start of the scheduled meeting. Number 2, an individual's comments to the board shall not exceed 2 minutes per meeting. Number 3, the board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. Thank you.
Información a personas para comentarios públicos. Número 1. Las personas que deseen participar durante la parte de la reunión designada por comentarios públicos deberán registrarse en McAllenISD.org al menos 1 hora antes del inicio de la reunión programada. Número 2. Los comentarios de un individuo a la Junta no excederán de 2 minutos por reunión. Y por último, número 3. La Junta no tolerará la perturbación de la reunión por parte de los miembros del público asistente. Gracias.
Okay, we only have 3 public speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Evelyn Flores. You can begin when you want.
Good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Flores. I am the Early Literacy Interventionist at Sam Houston Elementary. We love our community, and we love the children and families in our community. Estamos orgullosos de formar parte de nuestra comunidad. For this reason, I ask everyone in this room, have you seen the before and after of an at-risk child learning to read? Let me tell you about these experiences for which I will only use pseudonyms. Anastasia, the student crying each day in class asking to go to the nurse. I would see her in the halls walking to the nurse from time to time since she was overwhelmed with not being able to read and write on grade level. Currently, Anastasia has read numerous decodable books and successfully transferred this knowledge by reading her first book. Lisa, the student who could not differentiate between the and it sound even after tracing letters in the air, looking at her mouth in the mirror, and building numerous CVC words. Not too long ago, she excitedly shared with our intervention group the plot of the latest book she is reading. She has also promised to tell us how the drama unveils. Doroteo, a first grade student at the time who could not complete assignments because he had trouble regulating due to underdeveloped executive function skills, which we could patiently work on in a small group setting. Despite this difficulty, he had the most magnificent mind. He made the best inferences and connections when we started reading books together. He even had the unique ability to crack a joke here and there. Like these stories, there are many of at-risk readers stepping into our intervention groups, defeated because since day one they were deemed at risk. For the children and for our community, I ask the board and administration to keep the early literacy intervention position so at-risk readers may be intervened early in a small group setting with the intensity necessary. By doing so, we will provide the little learners with great minds the opportunity to be fearless in showing their great potential as readers, writers, thinkers, speakers, and learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores.
That's very nice. I literally jumped.
Our second speaker is Alfredo Gonzalez.
Does that have to be that loud? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alfredo Gonzalez, and I teach 6th grade through 7th grade and 8th grade IB and STEAM Visual Art at De Leon Middle School. I've been a teacher in McAllen for about 12 years. I came here today to not only speak as a teacher, but as a parent and as a product of this district. I graduated from Nicky Rowe in 2000. Being a teacher has made me a better artist, a parent, a husband. I'm sure there's other positive ways it's affected me that I haven't even begun to understand yet. My main goal when entering this profession was to be able to share my passion, enthusiasm, and appreciation for the creative process in all its forms, whether it's 2D or 3D. And the product of that can actually be seen in the halls of the school board building. I feel that we as art teachers and fine arts teachers are able to achieve this by providing a wide range of experiences for our students. We don't get a huge budget, and it seems like every year our budget seems to shrink, and now it seems that you are deciding to take away time. We only really ever get two main resources, and that is time and money. So when those two resources are chipped away, how are we able to prepare these experiences for our students? This takes time. In one day, I will teach all 3 grade levels. All 3 will be doing different projects: paint, printmaking, clay, you name it, collage. It all happens. This requires planning to come up with these projects, time to gather the materials, put it all together, set it aside, prepare. When that time gets taken away, I feel like the students are the ones that will suffer and not get the experiences that they deserve, and which I am a product of, and I know what it feels like to come through that. And for all fine arts teachers, I feel like if you take away time from the day, we're forced to take time beyond the day, which then now affects our own family time. And I know we would greatly appreciate it if this decision is given some thought and consideration for all the fine arts teachers in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third and final speaker is Gloria Garza Guerrero.
Hello. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Gloria Garza Guerrero, and I am the American Sign Language teacher at Memorial High School in the foreign language department. I graduated from McAllen. I am a team player, and I am not here to cause conflict or have any confrontation with anyone. But I have to say, and thank you for the opportunity, I am concerned, as other elective teachers are, about the removal of our second planning period and the requirement to teach an additional class without compensation. I teach 3 levels of American Sign Language, levels 1, 2, and 3, and therefore have 3 preps. In addition to regular students, I have deaf students and deaf plus unit students, and as a result, prepping for class takes a long time in order to address the different student populations in my same classroom. Losing the second planning period would mean less time to adequately prepare for classes, which ultimately affects the quality of education our students receive. The future is in our classrooms, and we, teachers, administrators, and district, need to be careful and conscientious about any actions we take that might affect the classroom in a negative way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guerrero.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment. We're at item 3, 2024-2025 fourth budget workshop. Dr. Gutierrez.
Yes, thank you, Madam President and board members. This is our fourth budget workshop. We have a couple of items that we want to talk to the board. We want to bring you an update for the plans for the option school at Lamar Academy. We also have the utilization of the Navarro office areas. We have a plan that we want to talk it over with the board. We're also going to give you an update on the 4-6 weeks budget. We have a comparison from this year to next year, so we'll talk about that, along with continue with a budget reduction plan that we have. So we'll give you an update on all of those funds that we have and where we have been reducing over the last couple of months. We also want to talk about SHARS, the Student Health and Related Services, give you an update about that because there is an audit that we're going through and filing an appeal. So we want to talk about the SHARS and how it impacts special education funding. And then also the optional flexible school day program that we initiated about maybe a month and a half to 2 months ago, and give you an update on that. So, and then the very last slide that we have is also giving you, we have an agenda, a preliminary agenda for our next budget workshop, which will be on May the 6th. And we're gonna go over some of those items that we are going to cover on May the 6th, as we are trying to finalize some decisions that we need to make very soon before we approve the budget in June for the next fiscal year. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Nino, Ms. Lorena Garcia, as well as Ms. Elizondo and Ms. Cavazos, who will be presenting these items to to all of you.
And before we start, board, let's keep in mind that we're going to reserve questions until the very end. We'll let everybody go through their presentation, and then we'll loop back and do the questions by, category A, B, C, D, so forth. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first item on plans for the Lamar Academy, the option school. Ms. Nino, go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Gutierrez, Madam President and Board of Trustees. I would like to give an update to our cost savings subcommittee as it impacts Lamar Academy options. Just the slide here showing us through that work that was shared at our last budget workshop with you, and continuing on to this second slide here, where I was able to have a brief update meeting today with the subcommittee just to give them information using the feedback from our last budget workshop on how there was a consideration that if we had Lamar options join the Achieve Early College High School campus, that to consider having classrooms inside versus in the portables. In doing the building walkthrough with Mr. Carmona, Mr. Trevino, and Ms. Garcia, there were some rooms identified, but in that conversation, there was also a separate walkthrough of the Navarro building that we again took the feedback on to identify some space there for our district staff that was going to go and be considered to be at the Lamar building, but that'll be shared here by Ms. Garcia later this evening. So if we're gonna go from indoor setting to an indoor setting, we will just keep Lamar options at the Lamar building, moving forward with our IB at Lamar Academy students as well. And then again, Ms. Garcia will give more information with, what is the plans then for our district staff that we had spoken about the last time. So this slide here just updates us with, again, Lamar Academy options remaining at the current Lamar Academy building. So no movement to Achieve Early College High School for next school year. With the cost saving options though in mind, still moving forward to reducing from 14 teachers to 6 teachers. Again, prioritizing 2 teachers for reading language arts, 2 in the math area, 1 in the science and 1 in the social studies. Also again is working with a subcommittee. We know that these funds are impacting 193 funds, which are from state and federal programs. So again, saying this is a place to start from and looking at 6 teachers and serving students over the year. And if there shows projected growth in the future, we can also look at that moving forward at that time. So overall at Lamar Academy for next year, we're looking at approximately 350 students for the IB program, plus again, about 80 students over the entire school year for Lamar options, considering the reduction to 6 teachers from 14. If we can serve more, fantastic. We'll be working together as high schools to identify students on who to help serve there so we can maximize those teachers and them working with our students, and looking at about 430 students overall at Lamar options. Again, still a cost savings of mine of about $493,000. Thank you.
So just in summary, the plan that we presented originally was we were thinking about moving options to Achieve Early College High School, but we decided just to leave them at Lamar with the IB program where it is. It will continue for next year the same way. Go ahead now, Ms. Garcia.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gutierrez. We have been working on some plans for the Navarro office areas to house some of the Crockett staff that is affected by some of the conditions in their offices. So Navarro currently houses 34 staff members. They are composed of the state and federal programs as well as the migrant department. The building is also utilized for parent learning during the day as well as the evening. Several walkthroughs were conducted of both sites, both Navarro and Crockett, and some classrooms were identified. On the chart up there, you see some yellow areas highlighted. There are 6 classrooms that are on the north side of the wing, north wing. There's 6 classrooms that are currently being utilized. However, they're fairly vacant where they could be easily transitioned to house office areas. In addition to that, inside the new wing, there's 5 additional classrooms that were identified that could be utilized for staff. The plan is to begin with the special education department. 45 staff members work within that department, and it's special ed and RDSPD as well. Um, the, uh, we also would like to focus, after moving special ed, to move the CTE staff, which are 3 staff members. Internal audit is also 3, and dyslexia 504 is 3 staff members. The biggest challenge that we find at Navarro is the parking availability. Currently, they have 62 paved parking spaces. However, there's in the blue arrow that you see on that map up there, there's an area that is currently used as temporary parking, overflow parking, sometimes by the parents. It's unpaved. So as a solution, as a quick solution, our facilities maintenance and operations department will be paving that with gravel, loose gravel, to give us another 8 to 10 parking spaces immediately. And that's something that they're currently working on. In addition to that, we have to also look at adding more permanent parking. Mr. Ruben Trevino met with Mr. Javier Hinojosa, our civil engineer, and they went out to the site. And there's some recommendations for a long-term parking solution. As far as funding is concerned, this is a possible solution. Currently, there's a roofing project that was allocated to Navarro, and $603,000 were reserved out of the maintenance tax note for that. In Mr. Trevino's opinion, he believes that he may not use the entire 603. So there's a possibility that some of those funds could be also repurposed for a paving improvement project. This is a better picture of the area where the orange arrow that you see there, that's the part that's used for overflow. And as you can see, it's just dirt and grass right now. So when it rains, it's not a good condition to park. This is the area that Mr. Hinojosa recommends utilizing for the additional parking spaces. As you can see, there's a driveway on Kendallwood. You would enter through Kendallwood, and then there's that cul-de-sac. That's a specific area. It's right behind the pavilion and right adjacent to the playscape. Doing a project right there would allow us to not have to move the playscape. I believe that originally there was a plan that was presented to have the current parking lot extended, but however, that would require that equipment be relocated. And this is what it looks like. Mr. Hinojosa drew a mock-up design of it. There's approximately 36 parking spaces that would be added with this project. And as you can see, there it connects to the current drive. Now, staff would be able to access it through the sidewalks. They would utilize the sidewalks to go through the pavilion, either to the pavilion space to access the main entrance, or they could follow the sidewalk trail to the existing parking lot. And that would take them to the front of the building to check in.
If you go back, Lorena, to the layout of Navarro, the other one, the first one, the first slide. So because of some of the facility conditions at Crockett, we will be able to safely provide them with this layout and utilize those classrooms that are highlighted in yellow, and that would pretty much remove the staff that is on the worst conditions at Crockett. The ones that would remain at Crockett, there would still be a staff there, but it would be where they're using the better part of Crockett. You know, those offices would still are in good condition for the rest of the staff that will remain there to stay there. It's just that special education, CTE, the internal auditors, the dyslexia is the ones that we feel that are in the worst conditions of that building to be relocated to Navarro. And of course, there is limited parking space right now, but if we follow the plan that Ms. Garcia presented, then we can expand the parking, not only for the staff, but also for any trainings that they have with parents or meetings that they have. There will be now at least more parking for the visitors that go there on a regular basis as well. So it will be a good utilization of that additional parking. And we do have the funds from the settlement or that was there before?
I followed up on the insurance settlement and only $19,000 were allocated or approved because there was a hailstorm prior to that, and that building was already hit by that and was part of that original claim. So the only thing that was covered is anything that was not damaged. So the roof was had already received damage. I received confirmation from the adjuster today.
So they had already fixed the roof?
It was not fixed.
Okay.
It was not fixed. And then there was another storm, so that second storm did not provide coverage since it was not fixed.
If I
But-
could clarify real quick.
The maintenance tax note is the one that I'm referring to,
Ah,
that was
okay.
allocated to Navarro.
Okay.
I
got
just, oh, real quick. So if you move people from Crockett to Navarro, well, that space is not gonna be filled at Crockett, right? Are we gonna use it for something else?
We shouldn't, there are some areas in there that, are in the special ed wing. There are some areas that leak, but then some areas that are still
Well,
good.
just, let me
Possible
ask.
it could be used for
Yeah,
storage.
I don't like need a definitive answer, cause I'm just saying, we're not gonna put staff in there for sure, but there's money already allocated for that roof, right? Why can't we use that money for the paving?
For Navarro or for Crockett?
Crockett. If you're pulling staff out of Crockett
Mhm.
and you're not gonna use that for staff, so you don't have to repair the roof there unless it's leaking, of course, because if you have files, but there's money allocated for
That's a
that
possibility, yeah.
repair. I know
Be-
that money's
Because we,
still there.
I think the board was, deciding not to
Yeah.
repair Crockett.
I'm just curious,
Yeah,
like,
so-
if we got that money and we're not gonna repair that roof because there won't be staff in there and it doesn't necessarily leak,
Right.
then that might be a little source of some funds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, because we can use it for, and it's not a very costly parking lot because it's not that big of a parking lot. In fact, that would be the slide that you wanted to talk about, the next one,
Yes,
that one.
it's 165,000 is the estimate.
Thank you.
We have
And,
like 600,000 for that
It
roof.
takes about 30 days to complete, once the vendor receives the notice to proceed.
So, about 165,000.
And you have about 600,000 for that roof,
Yeah,
so, right? Am I right?
Well,
Ted?
let's
Seven.
hold off on discussion on that.
Okay.
Okay,
but the monies are there, and
Okay.
that can be, and we only need 165 to provide that parking space needed at Navarro. And that would really help move the staff from the most serious issues that we're having at Crockett. That would help a lot. Okay?
And now moving on to some of the budget items, we wanted to talk about the projected average daily attendance and enrollment for the 4-6 weeks. So we bring back to you the chart that shows the enrollment and ADA. The blue line is enrollment and the orange line is ADA. And on there, we identify what the original budget was planned at and what the 4-6 weeks actuals brought in. So the original budget was planned with 18,181 ADA and a 92.7 attendance. However, the 4-6 weeks ADA came in a little bit lower at 17,968. Attendance was a little bit higher at 93.1%. This brings us to a net loss of 1.5 million in state funding due to that reduction. So that is going to impact our projections for the end of the year. It's one of the factors affecting that. And on the next slide, we provide a summary of that. The very first section shows the 2023-2024 original budget. This was prepared in June. And then the 2023-24 based off of the 4-6 weeks data, the latest data that we have, and the variance for that. The original budget was at a 0 compensation percent increase, so there's no salary increases in that number. There was a deficit, a planned deficit of 24,500,000. Out of that, 20 million was ESSER projects. And from those 20 million, 13 million have already been transferred to fund balance. So that has been reduced. The one that's pending, of course, is the Quinta Mazatlan, which is pending the mediation. So there's, you can see on the revenue side, there's an increase of 9.6 million of revenue, and several factors affected that increase. The very first one would be the VATRE, which was 5.2 million. So those factors have already been included into the template. In addition to that, we did see some of the special programs increase from what was projected. For example, child nutrition program, participation rates came in higher than what had been planned. Another area that grew substantially was special education, meaning that there were more students identified receiving the services, and some of the other special revenue. So that is what accounts for that. In addition to that, we did have, as explained in the March budget amendment, we had some tax compression because our tax rate did go down by 17.58 cents. And that impacted both the state and the local tax revenues. State funding went up and tax revenues went down. And then the last thing that impacted that figure is the $1.5 million loss that we talked about in ADA. On the expenditure side, we're bringing in the expenditures from the original budget. So this includes 100% of the staffing that was planned in the summer. So those are the figures that we have right now. And the expenditures, the factors that affected the decrease in expenditures is the original budget didn't have compensation. So to that, we add that. In addition to that, we moved the 13 million as our 2 local funds. So the net of that is the difference. And then the bottom chart breaks it down by just Fund 199. So the deficit for the 4 to 6 weeks total is $6 million. And then the next chart provides a breakdown of the 24-25 projections. So we were able to utilize the new template with the VATRE information in that to recalculate what the deficit would look like. So again, it's a similar format that shows, in this case, the 4 to 6 weeks and compares it to next year's budget, projected budget. So what we did in planning this projection, we estimated about 500 student enrollment drop, because that over the 5-year average, that's what we've been seeing, and that's also the number that TASB had come up with when they did the staffing study. So we feel that's a good number. So that impacts the state revenue by $3 million. So that's one of the reasons why it went down. Other factors, child nutrition program is budgeting conservatively. We also are not including SHARs in this calculation because right now it's pending an appeal. So we're not counting on that money. We're also reducing interest earnings because we feel that's going to go down. So those are some of the factors that affected that. On the expenditures, again, we also are looking at what was originally budgeted. So it's a full set of payroll costs from June that's carried over to this projection. In addition to that, we removed the one-time compensation, the longevity pay, and the VATRE stipend. So that's why you see a decrease in the expenditures. So next year, we're not going to have those expenditures. That brings the deficit to 10.3 million. Not in that figure, we have to consider that there's a situation with the property values that could affect the district to the tune of about $3 million for the current year. We also are still pending information on SHARs, and that projection was calculated at a 0% increase. If we were to consider a 1% increase, that would add $2.7 million to that deficit. A 2% would add 4.1 million, and a 2.5 would add 5 million. So for planning purposes, we're still going to continue with the $14 million deficit. as we move forward, we should be getting better numbers. As a matter of fact, on April 30th, we get our preliminary tax values. So we'll recalculate the template again at that point. So these figures are very fluid, and they're estimates, and they change as we receive more data.
We go to the, just I wanted to add, go to the slide before, Ms. Garcia, just, you see the 23, 24, 6 weeks, deficit of the $6 million? That we've talked about that in the past, that since we moved the ESSER funds into general fund, that will help us cover that $6 million deficit that we've talked about before. So that way, we can cover that deficit with the relocation of ESSER funds to the general fund. And so those $6 million will be taken care of by moving those ESSER funds to local funds, to the general fund. And then the next slide, the next one,
Yes.
would be working with the $10.3 million, but we still have the SHARs and the property values, which is about 14 million. So that's what we've been working with, the 14 million, and working from there to reduce that deficit. And I think the next slide that you have would show all the savings, cost savings that we've been doing so far up until this point.
One of the things that we worked on was on the Phase 4 staff assignments, and this summarizes what those changes will bring. Phase 3 and Phase 4 will be taken into effect after testing is over. We didn't want to disrupt the campuses by making moves in the middle of testing. So Phase 3 has not, the assignments have not been handed out. And Phase 4, this is what it covers. It's a total of a little bit over $1 million in cost savings in these changes. We started off with 14 instructional aides. Most of them were at-risk aides that are being reassigned to special education instructional aides because that's a high area of need. We also have 3 instructional aides that are being assigned to support the secondaries, the high schools, as library aides. And then 3 central office ESSER strategists that they're with the special ed department to support the campuses. And these would be moved to teacher vacancies in the special education area. The specialist for social emotional support would be moved to testing coordinator. There's a vacancy. And then we have several vacancies that are new, some that are new, and some that are still on the books from before. 2 interventionists and 1 literacy coach. And now I'll explain that in the literacy coach is not necessarily that campuses are not going to have a literacy coach. Elementary campuses currently have 4 staff members, 1 literacy coach, and 3 interventionists. So it would be on the principal's discretion whether to move somebody into the literacy coach position from one of the interventionists and continue with the literacy coach. However, that subsequent vacancy would be closed. So it's up to the principals to assign the staff where they need them. We also have 3 bus aides that are no longer needed. There's a coordinator for instructional materials. There was a recent custodial vacancy that opened up, a sergeant, and then a recent at-risk instructional assistant. So all of this was added to the budget reduction plan, and we've broken it out by fund. So remember, we started with the 14 million, and in this case, we took the information of the different projected savings, like the reduction committee savings, the reductions in software, the central office department budget cuts, the reassignments, and elementary computer lab savings, and the IMAS project. We grouped them all by fund, and then those are the totals that you see at the bottom, the total by fund. If you look at, let's just say, for example, General Fund 199, it's 6.9 million out of that. So even though with the Phase 4 staff reassignments, we're at a deficit of 1.755. Keep in mind that these savings are spread out throughout the entire funding system, state and federal, local, not just 199. And the 14 million was in the general fund. So what we are going to do in the case of some of these entitlement programs is utilize them more strategically to be able to support 199 in cases where they can. But there are cases where it's not possible. Like, for example, child nutrition program, you can only use those funds for CNP. CTE is another one, very restrictive on the spending. So we're still working on that budget reduction plan by fund.
Yeah, but just to add what Ms. Garcia is saying is that, like, for example, if we have additional state comp in Title I, for example, that we can reclassify, and they can take those expenditures out of 199 and save that money, we will continue to save that way. So, like, for example, if you see state comp is $1.8 million that we have been in savings, those $1.8 million state comp can pick up some local funds that we're expending on, and they can pick up those costs or those expenditures, and we can put the savings to 199. But so far, 199 is almost at $7 million. So we've been working very hard to reduce that deficit, but not only through 199, but also all the other programs, as you can see there, where we have been cutting back and reducing the expenditures to save that money and put it back in our budget.
And to give you an update where we're at on some of these savings, for example, the reduction in software subscriptions, we've already identified where those softwares are getting paid out of, and those budget amounts have been reduced from the benchmark for next year for the department. So that savings already is, in essence, in the books. Another one that is savings that we can already count on are the staff reassignments, as well as the central office department budget cuts. Those have already been cut from their benchmarks, so they will not have that funding. The ones that may take a while, a little bit longer, would be some of the measures in the reduction committee savings, because some of it occurs over time. But the rest of them, the elementary computer labs, that's something that's not going to happen. She's not going to purchase those, so those will be an immediate savings. And then, of course, the IMAS project is another one that's already done. So that kind of gives you an idea how soon we can see these savings. And then I'll turn it over to Ms. Elizondo.
Good evening, Board President, Board Trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Gutierrez. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about SHARS and give you an update. Thank you. So some of the items that we bill for SHARS are personal care, speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nursing, physician services, psychological service, transportation, and audiology services. So we bill these services throughout the full fiscal year. At the end, we submit a cost report and we submit our billings, right? That all our staff bill for throughout the year, right? And so in the last 5 years, McAllen averages about 1.9 million in revenue for SHARS. The Texas Health and Human Services is reducing or has already reduced the statistical percentage by 50%. Which means that the financial impact of 50% of that SHARS reimbursement for all districts across the state is a lot less, 50% less. McAllen ISD stands to lose over $961,000. We have already submitted an informal appeal. It was filed. Unfortunately, we did get that informal appeal back, and it was denied. So then we went forward and we went ahead and filed an appeal with the Texas Health and Human Service Commissions, and we did get that response on April the 4th. Right now, they are going to assign somebody to us so that they can hear our case, a judge, and we already know that individual's name. We are waiting right now our hearing date. That's the next step. So here you see a overview of 2020 to 2024, the fiscal years for our SHARS revenue on the very top. You see our SHARS interim payments, and you see our SHARS cost report settlements. So if you look at our SHARS revenue fiscal year 2020, you see that the total reimbursement that we received was over 1.4 million. We get that by looking at our interim payments, which is all the services that we bill for, plus we look at the cost report settlement. So it's both of those combined give us the total SHARS revenue at the top, the very first line. So you see that for the fiscal year of 2020, you see there for the fiscal year of 2021, you see a dip. Why? Because it was COVID year. So our students were at home, remote learning, so we could not bill for those services, right, for online. Then you see your SHARS revenue for fiscal year 2022. Again, you see an increase. Why? Because our students started coming back, and now we could bill for those in-person services. 2023, we see our SHARS revenue. It's a little over, hold on, I can't see. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my glasses. 3 million, right? And then right now for 2024, billing to date, we're at 559,000. That is all of the services that we've billed for up to February, and we're in a formal appeal right now. So all of that is pending. I just wanted to give you just a overview of what it looks like for the past couple of years.
How much
Yes.
is the appeal? How much is the appeal on that last column, on 2024 at the very bottom?
So that we're looking at, sir, if we go back to here, this first slide, we're looking at 961,000, somewhere around there, that we're looking for appeal. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And every district in the state of Texas is going through this, unfortunately. So these are some of the next one. These are some of the items that we are appealing here from McAllen ISD. This is written in our appeal. And you have our Medicaid eligible student count, our IEP ratio. We're looking at the one-way trip ratios for our students using our special education buses. We have our Medicaid students requiring specialized services. We have our direct medical services. We have our transportation. Then we have our disallowance, the 1.4 million in direct medical costs. And then number 7, the direct medical percentage rate, which is the 43.61, and you can see how it drastically went down to 20.4. So those are the 7 items that we have placed in our appeal. We've submitted all of our paperwork, all of our artifacts are attached to our appeal. So what are the next steps? What do we need to do? Like I mentioned earlier, we did get our denial for the informal appeal, so we are appealing. We received that on April the 4th. We need our hearing case number. We have the Tanya Garza, who is representing the Texas Health and Human Services. That is their attorney. McAllen ISD, what we need to do is we need to decide if we are going to hire our own attorney and have us represent us during that hearing, who has a financial background and a background in SHARS, or if we are going to allow Houston ISD, who we are currently in contract with, represent us during that hearing for SHARS. So that is the next steps for McAllen ISD while we await our hearing date.
Ms. Elizondo, is it correct to say that all the districts got their appeal denied in the state?
That is correct, sir. So what we found, the very first bullet up there, is that it's a generic letter sent to all districts. It wasn't specific to McAllen ISD. Never in our denial did it say these 7 items that McAllen is appealing. It never mentioned it. It was, we got your informal appeal, you are denied, you have the right to go to a formal appeal. It was a blanket letter. And all districts received the same letter. It wasn't specific to McAllen ISD. Other districts are appealing different things, right? This is where we got hit because of that change in 50% of the revenue reimbursement. So, yes, you are correct, sir, that it wasn't specific to McAllen. Now, the formal appeal is, thank you for submitting a formal appeal, McAllen ISD. Your next steps are wait for your hearing date, and Tanya Garza will be representing us. You need to decide as a district who will be representing you.
We'll talk to Mr. John Ball and get together with him and find, get our legal representation as well.
Yes. As soon as I get our hearing date, I will send it over to ELT so we know what the next steps are, because we do need to make a decision. We need to let the hearing officer, Tanya Garza, know who she'll be contacting for McAllen ISD.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The last section that we have is to cover the flexible school day program that we initiated about, like I said, about a month and a half to 2 months ago. And Ms. Cavazos will just give us an update, because this is another way that we can recapture some funding through the Flex School program that we've already started. Go ahead, Ms. Cavazos.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Gutierrez. I'm Lisa Cavazos, Director of Student Outreach, going to talk a little bit about optional flexible school day program. I want to start with a little bit of an overview, because it is something that is very, very new to the district. And interestingly enough, everything that you really need to know about what optional flexible school day program is in the title itself. Optional means that the students' parents must give consent for them to participate in this specific program. We can't mandate that any student participate. We can only make that recommendation based on the eligibility factors set by the state. Flexible, rather than one moment in time during the school day where attendance is taken, we're able to be flexible and offer students all of the minutes, all of the time that they are physically present in school, so that gives them flexibility. They don't have to be here at 9:45 to be counted for the day. They get to be here for 430, 450 minutes, depending on the school day. And then school day, TEA defines one school day for purposes of time earned and funding as 240 minutes. So every 4 hours that a student is physically present in school gives us one school day of funding. Just a little bit about the timeline, where we've been so far. The application for optional flexible school day program went into TEA following the board meeting where approval was granted. So 12/18 application went in. 123 information sessions began, sort of proactively, to make sure that our school leadership knew what this was, that it was likely coming, and what they needed to do to prepare. We received our approval on January 31st. On February 19th, our internal systems were in place, and training for school staff was begun. On 2/28, the very first student went on optional flexible school day program, and all of March was spent providing support for campus staff, administration, principals, right, everybody involved. By April 8th, we had 100% of our schools represented in OFSDP enrollment. And May 15th, which is upcoming, we anticipate submitting for the 24-25 school year. Alrighty, so a few key points here. As part of this optional flexible school day program, as I mentioned, students are tracked in terms of minutes, not days. So students are tracked with their minutes. Teachers do this tracking based on the time that they're spent in the classroom. So it's a minute for minute. As much time as the student spends in the classroom, that is what the teacher tracks in Skyward. All school business, so whether the student's in class, maybe in the nurse's office, the counselor, any kind of testing, anything they're doing on campus, all of those minutes count towards OFSDP credit. We are funded on a 1 day per 240 minutes of time, so students can earn up to 600 minutes, including any kind of tutorial, after school kind of activity as well. Funding is not to exceed the number of days in a grading period. So even though a student could technically be in school for one calendar day, 600 minutes, on a 240 per 1 day, that gives you about 2.5 days, you still cannot get more than 1 day of credit for each student. These students are no longer counted in our ADA. That is very, very important. So as soon as they go on to OFSDP, they're no longer tracked as part of our ADA for that percentage, nor for funding. So just to give you some current statistics and this is as of last Wednesday morning, we had a total of 3,564,288 minutes tracked, representing 926 students on the program over all of our campuses, with a total funding amount of $333,789. Now, that's a very exciting number. I'm going to explain that number just a little bit more, but before I do, just to give you an idea of how quickly these numbers add up, the average student has been on OFSDP for about 10 days. So take that into consideration. These stats were pulled last Wednesday morning. As of Friday afternoon, so just 2 more school days worth, we were at 4,340,000 minutes, 807, 4.3 million, sorry, minutes at $409,868 in funding. So it adds up very, very quickly because of how many students earning so many minutes every day. So let me go a little bit more in detail on this funding. So as I mentioned, these students are no longer counted in our ADA for attendance or funding. And the easiest way to think about this is that when we look at attendance funding or ADA funding, we are funded on a percentage that students attend school, right? When we look at all of those 900 and some odd students that are at OFSDP, and we look at them as a collective group, their average attendance as a group was 83%. So if you consider that across almost 1,000 students, we were only really receiving about 83% of the possible funding that we could get for them. Now we put them on an OFSDP flexible program. Their attendance behavior hasn't changed much. It went up 1 percentage point. They're at 84%. But given that we're able to track their minutes, and 240 minutes gives them a day's credit, the average attendance now based on the 240-minute day is 150% attendance, right? So now we're taking an 83% rate of funding for these students and making it 100%. We can't get 150, remember we can't get more than 1 for a child, but we can take those students and get maximum funding for them, which is incredible for funding. But also, these students are earning back time. So all of those additional minutes, they have time to make up so that they don't lose credit for course, for semester. They're not retained based on attendance. They're able to make up that time as well. So it really, truly is a win-win for both student and district. Based on actual students, right, enrolled in the program and their actual days of participation, and again, this is as of last Wednesday, given an average of 83%, right, overall. Some were lower than that, some were a little higher than that. The difference in funding, 83% versus 100%, is a little over $50,000. That's grown about $10,000 in 2 days. So again, you can see how quickly those numbers add up. Now, we began this in the 4th 6 weeks, right, very late in the game in terms of the school year. But beginning with 24-25, the rules of the game change a little bit, right? We are able to put students on very early on to recover absences based on a short-term illness or a family circumstance where they can recover those days. We're able to recover that funding, and we prevent truancy altogether. So if you look at the students who are under the 10% rule, under the 90% rule, they've missed more than 10% of school. Those are 2,428 students currently across the district. So we're not quite half, we're right around 1/3 of those students currently participating in Flex. But if we took all of those students, right, if we took all of those students and we had them on the Flex program, and we were earning even 95% ADA for them. Remember, we're at 150% on average for the ones on the program now. But if we were earning 95%, we would be able to, over the course of the school year, bring in about $14 million in funding for those specific students. Everybody else that remains, if you take everybody that is over the 90% rule, it's another 17,908 students. Their average attendance is 95.29, which all by themselves, that attendance, you're looking at about $105 million. So together, it's $119 million worth of funding. Now, 20,000 students at just 93% ADA is about 5 million less. So over the course of a year, if we use this program strategically, we're not only able to prevent truancy, we're not only able to prevent students from losing credit or being retained, but we're able to significantly increase funding for ADA.
So we could increase up to about $4.7 million
Yes, sir,
for a full year.
for a full year.
And the kids are no longer truant, and then they can also make up credit. So, and then we also get additional funding. So it's like a win-win-win all across.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then if we can move on to the last slide, and then before we open it up for questions, is that we do have our next budget workshop, number 5, on May the 6th. We do have already a proposed preliminary agenda on what we are going to be covering that day. On that day, we're gonna bring in the contract renewals and non-renewals for next year, 24-25. We're gonna be looking at salary increase models, which we're gonna be looking at models for salary increase for our staff. We're also gonna be looking for, to make a final recommendation for the planning period. We're working on several options. We're gathering information, so that's still in progress. So, but we wanna make a final determination by then. We're also gonna be looking at phase 5 on staff assignments, reassignments. We're working on that phase already. And then we're gonna be looking at employee benefits proposal. We have a proposal by Blue Cross Blue Shield where we can maintain the health benefits the same, so that if we give a salary increase, that we don't take it off through increasing insurance. So we're looking at hopefully to maintain the health insurance like it is without changing anything to the plan, other than to give employees a better benefits through the proposal. And then we're gonna be looking at UTRGV, McAllen ISD Collegiate Campus cost. We have a couple of costs that we need to cover. And there may be another item or two that we may add to the agenda for May the 6th, I'm sorry. But this is our preliminary proposed agenda that we have for May 6th. And we already started working on all of those items already, so that we could bring some final decisions on some items that are up there. And we'll cover those at that time. But that concludes this presentation, and Madam President and board members.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gutierrez. Okay, we'll begin with 3A, update to plans for Lamar Academy options. Does anyone have any discussion or questions for staff?
It's just the Lamar Academy options. I'm sorry. It's the first one. Okay. No.
Okay, well,
Right. For options?
uh-huh.
Or for both, right? So I just had one question on where on the slide number 5, where it mentions removing the assistant principal and then the IB coordinator. I know there was a document circulating about changing the number of days for that IB coordinator from 203 to 187. Is that all in this discussion, or is it staying the 203?
So first, the assistant principal does have a strike through, only because the assistant principal is already accounted for on the IB slide. So when I don't want anyone to think there was an assistant principal for IB and then a separate assistant principal for Lamar options. So thank you for asking that question. And then to go to the days, I can get more information for you on that information about the days.
Because I know there's so much that's done during summer to prep for, because of the way the IB testing is done, you know, mostly you get the results in the summer and then to prep for the next year. So I was just curious on that, because I had that message a couple, I guess, weeks back, and when I saw it, it reminded me about the number of days if there was changes.
We will check that. Thank you, ma'am.
So, Ms. De La Garza, you're saying to add more days?
So just to keep the days, from what I understood is that there was a discussion of removing days from that position, so I would hope that we could just keep them at the days that they were at.
No, we haven't had any discussions of cutting days on at IB.
Good, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to 3B, plan for Navarro office areas. Does anybody have any discussion or questions?
I do, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As was mentioned earlier, and it ties, well, I guess the first question I have is how many staff members will remain at Crockett?
Do you know the other programs at Crockett? It would
The
be-
departments and staff members.
I have the number, but not with me, but,
More or less?
yeah, it's about right. I just couldn't remember, and if you had it, I would appreciate it, but that's great, that's okay. It was mentioned about the roof. The concern I have with roofs, I think we all do, and you can see what happened with Crockett, and then we've seen this happen before. If we, you know, they have a lifespan, and we have been trying to stay within a maintenance schedule of renewing these roofs and ARCs. We did really, really well up to now, but obviously going forward is going to be a challenge. So I would hate for us to not make sure that we complete that roof. If there's extra money, great, but I think it needs to be with fidelity that the roof gets replaced. It's going to have to last us 20, 25 years on average.
Replace it
At Navarro.
At
At
Navarro,
Navarro.
okay.
Oh, okay,
At
I was
Navarro.
confused.
Yeah, at Navarro.
Navarro.
Yeah, okay, because we are talking about Navarro, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. Yes.
All right, I don't want to get off task. And the other is, are we planning to have both parking areas? If we move forward with the proposed one, the two areas would then stay?
Yes.
Okay. It won't impact, I noticed there's a lot of equipment there for the community to use. It won't impact any of that. There's like a walking trail, there's a playground area, and all. None of that will be affected, okay? And then the last thing is there was a mention about again at Crockett, it was about $300,000 left on the hail loss claim from the 2012, and then the board approved another $400,000. So in the allocated funding right now is $700,000 for Crockett's roof. If we're not going to do the roof at Crockett, that part of it or some of it, if not all of it, could be repurposed for some of these other projects. And so the point I'm making is I'd like to see whatever was allocated for the facility we're going to keep to stay true, and then use those funds and any others you may find to then move over. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
I do have a question. Just generally, what's the, I guess, rationale for keeping some people at Crockett and not moving everybody over to Navarro?
We have maxed out the space at Navarro because we have also the federal and state programs already. There's already a staff there. So what we're doing, we're kind of like asking them to give up some of those classrooms so that we could move some of the Crockett staff. So we maxed out in Navarro.
And are those offices that we're seeing like 6 and 5, are we having one person per office in there, or we're using?
No, we're going to use multiple.
Okay.
Yeah, multiple. Staff members will be in those rooms.
The reason for the question, of course, is just that all of these situations keep bringing up, like, what's the long-term plan and everything. I know y'all are doing a great job, you're doing your best, but I just hate the whole band-aiding situations, but that's just where we're at.
I have one thought. If we were ready to move students to portables at Achieve, why can't we move the remaining employees at Crockett to a safer spot at Achieve? Or any other campus that has available? My thought would be to have everybody out of Crockett, other than the police department.
Yeah.
Because of the condition of that school, and it's just gonna get worse. And if we're obviously not putting money into that school, if something does happen again, insurance is gonna deny whatever future claims we have. So I just think if we say we're moving people out of Crockett, then we move people out of Crockett. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and we've thought about it, but for right now, it's just that because of where we are with space and the time of the year that we're in, for sure we're going to be able to remove the staff that need to be moved out of the facilities that are in real bad condition. At least the ones that are staying at Crockett are staying on the newer side of the building where they're fine, and the buildings that they're using, that part of the building is in better shape for them to stay there. We need to keep them for one more year.
Well, yeah, I would really like to make sure that we keep that at the forefront of the plans or future plans, and when and if we do a facility assessment, to have those staff members in mind when we do find
Absolutely.
vacant space. I know there's some at Memorial High School, right? The ROTC section. I think that was one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Don't come at me for that one. But wherever we do find spots, I think that we need to
Keep that in mind for them.
eventually get Crockett cleared where we
Okay.
can.
Yes, that's a goal, the eventual.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that we also, and Trustee De La Garza mentioned this, we need a facilities assessment plan. I mean, the one we have is, well,
Outdated.
very outdated by several years. And so I think that I agree with Trustee De La Garza Lopez because we shouldn't have anybody at Crockett. I walked Crockett, and I walked Crockett like 2 years ago, and I thought people shouldn't be there then. So if there's a minimal amount of staff, I'd like to see them moved as well.
Same here.
Okay, we're on to item C, fourth 6 weeks update to 23-24 budget. It's the projected budget with the funds 109, 199.
Page 11?
Mine's not numbered.
I think it's 12.
12,
Mine is
gotcha.
page 12.
I think it's that one.
Page 16.
16?
Now, why do we have different pages?
I'm looking at the
Because
third
they've
version.
updated
Yeah,
it
we're not-
multiple times.
I think it's right.
Yeah, mine
And
doesn't
actually,
have-
during this meeting, some of y'all are actually updating it. We keep getting emails that it's been
Yes.
updated.
I know,
Okay.
it's because I'm clicking on
All
it.
right.
I was like,
That
who's
explains-
updating the
yeah.
slide?
We have it up there.
I'm just-
Mine's the one chiming
We
every
need to
time
try to
Natalie
not
sends
touch
something.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll go on to the next one, to
Yes.
item D, E, budget reduction plan for fund? Or no, D, update to 24-25 projected budget, that's where we are right now. Okay, yeah, and then the next one, budget reduction plan. Anyone?
Well, I do real quick. Some of these are identified as reoccurring costs, and, right? Some of these are reoccurring costs that if we maintain, that's what we'll be seeing as savings, if not more, because of inflation going forward. But some of these are not, right? I know of at least two on there that aren't.
On the reduction plan?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah, correct, you're right. Yes, sir.
okay,
Like, for example, the software is not gonna be a recurring cost.
right,
The IMS project is another one.
yeah. So I don't know, how do we differentiate that? I mean, the reason I'm saying is that when you came from the district that is now giving back some of the things they took away, because they've done well enough, they're gonna say, we took, I think it was 10%, and we're gonna give them back the 10% we took away in the past. I'd like us to be able to get to a point where we keep track of this, and I know you will, and that we're in a much better place so we can give back what we might have taken if it's still necessary and needed. So just a caution of how we keep track, that's all. Because right off the bat, you think, wow, this is great because this is a reoccurring, we've gotten it down where we want to, we're in a much better place, but the reality, some of these aren't. Okay, thank you, that's it.
Trustee
Excuse
Kittle?
me, I have a few questions. For the plan for phase 4, I'm noticing some strategists and interventionists and literacy coaches, but we've kind of used them interchangeably. Are these all different positions? There's ESSER strategists, then there's 2 interventionists and a literacy coach. Because originally when we were talking about this, you were saying that there's 4 per elementary campus, right?
Correct.
So when you say close vacancies, is that per campus or is that just 3
There's
total?
3 total vacancies at this time at the elementaries. 2 of those are interventionists, and 1 is a literacy coach. So since they're vacancies, then depending on the need at that campus, the principal would either reassign one of the other interventionists into that position if they prefer to keep the lower level, the early childhood one, or the math, or whichever one they would decide. However, one of those vacancies would have to be closed. And they're existing right now, people that have left.
Okay. And when do these close? Immediately, or is it after STAR testing, or is it before the next school year?
Well, right now, in essence, they're not being utilized because there's nobody there to occupy the position.
Okay.
So the matter would be how the principal's going to distribute the assignments, whether they're going to make some changes, reshuffle the staff, or actually keep that position closed. Because one is the K2.
Literacy.
Literacy,
Okay.
yes.
And so
what is the status on that movement? Because it's not in the presentation,
Yeah.
but it's still in this budget plan?
Yeah, that's gonna be part of our, actually, we're looking at phase 5, where we're gonna have to discuss with the principals, the elementaries, those 4 positions. We are looking at campus needs. They may keep 3 out of the 4, and then we're looking at those that will keep 2 out of the 4. We are going to have those conversations with those principals individually, and it will be their decision who they want to keep. Of course, the higher need campuses that would have, we're gonna work for only 1 position would close, and they can keep 3 of them.
Okay.
And then the ones that are not in higher need would keep 2, and then the other 2 we would close, and we would let them decide which ones they want to keep.
Okay.
So we're gonna work with the principals in that manner.
Yeah.
And in fact, we were talking about scheduling meetings with them and HR, but we're waiting after the month of April because of all the testing that's going on. We don't want any disruptions or distractions on this. So we're looking into May. And then, since we're almost at the end of the year, all of these changes will be effective next school year. We'll let them finish where they are.
Okay.
And then we'll be effective until August when we come back.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Sophia.
No, go ahead, Trustee Kinnaman, you have the floor.
Let me just take a minute to look at my notes, and Sophia can go. I don't mind.
Quick point. I know that you moved, there was some positions in the elementary that you moved some library aides, and maybe I think I heard that some of those library aides went to special ed. And if that's the case, why weren't they, or shouldn't they be moved to? Sorry, me and my microphone. Sorry, Natalie. When you move, like you've got here, move 3 instructional aides to library aides, and then some instructional aides you moved up. So anybody that's got library experience, I know that at the high schools that had 2 librarians, we removed 1 and we added an aide. If there's any of those in the elementaries that already have library experience, I think it would make more sense to put them at the high schools because they already come with library experience. It's no learning curve, really. So just a suggestion on that.
Ms. Mendez, we did put the library aides already at the high schools, right? Or we haven't
I
done?
think I heard they went to some special ed.
We're at the same level, the same campus.
Yes, we try to keep them at the same campus.
I realize that, but if you've got people with library experience and you've got vacancies for aides at the high schools, use the experienced ones where they have experience.
Yes, and we still have time to review
Sure,
those.
just a suggestion.
The phases are ready, but they're still in draft, so we'll review and take that into consideration.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want anyone to lose a job, so put them where they need to be so that we save everybody's job, because that's goal number 1. And then just saying, what was reported to me was that people that had library experience were being put like in special ed. They have to learn special ed at that point.
Correct.
But if you've got space at a library position, put them there. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Trustee Kinnaman?
And then I just had a thought, if there's some downsizing going on at the campus level, and I'm just thinking of the interventionists, so I think the interventionists fall under the professional learning department, is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Just making sure that, I guess we're balanced too, because I think there's positions that are non-campus related that we could also consider downsizing as a savings, especially if that means getting to keep something at positions that work with students directly.
Yeah,
So taking a look at that.
we have some positions at central office that we are going to downsize and pass it on to the coordinators. And we already have made we had those discussions already this morning. As a matter of fact, as we're planning this, we know that we're gonna have to remove from central office and downsize also at those positions and pass it on to coordinators.
And then that leads me to my next question. So I think you had mentioned, Ms. Nino, some central office department budget cuts. Can someone expand on those? What does that mean? And are we able to see an outline of some changes that have been made?
That was based on their last year's budget benchmark before the cuts, because they were given an 8% cut. So we go back to prior to the 8% cut. So that would be their benchmark for this year. And these are your central office departments, not non-campus based. Like, for example, accounting, payroll, HR, fine arts, athletics. In some ways, it could impact the campuses if some of those budgets are being used by those departments to support. CTE is another one. So we applied a 10% across the board cut based on that benchmark, and that's what they were given so that they could begin to plan their budgets for next year.
Okay.
And Ms. Kittleman, for this year, they cut 8%. All we did, we just added 2% more. So to make it 10. So they didn't get 8% cut this year, and then we're gonna say 10% for next year. That would be 18. It was only, we just added 2% more from what they already have now. They're working with 8% less. We just added 2% more to be at 10% for the 24-25 school year. So that's where we're getting the 10%.
Okay. I just think that the more we can be transparent about change, because there's a lot happening at the campus level, and I think campus level people would, a lot of people would feel good to see across the board that we're all having to make, every different department and areas having to make different cuts. And so it would be good to see like a clear outline of what is being done, especially at the administrative level.
Okay. Maybe we can put in an Excel spreadsheet and.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
And they already got their budget allocations, so we can get, put it all in a spreadsheet, all the budget allocations that everybody got.
One more question. Okay, thank you very much. This is just a clarification. All ESSER funding positions are facing non-renewal, correct? Across the board, any position that's ESSER?
Correct. That was, they were given a letter last summer, so yes, we are encouraging them, as we have been all year long from what I understand, that to apply for any openings that we have. And we will have openings. We have staff resigning, retiring every time, so they're going to be available for them to consider. Several of them have already accepted other positions within the district. So that's what we like to see, that encourage them to apply and for other positions that we have vacancies.
And for example, just to clarify, on this slide, there is 3 ESSER strategists, ESSER-funded strategists, and since we did have 3 vacancies in special education, and they're special ed certified, we're able to pair them up.
They're now working there. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we're making every effort to save our human capital as our #1 goal, and we're making every effort not to lay off anyone, and for everyone to stay working in McAllen ISD, and that's our #1 goal, is to sustain the human capital that we have for next year.
So for me, I'd like to see a little bit deeper into the budgets. Like, I have a hard time with saying just 10% across the board to every department, because I think some departments are very lean compared to other departments. And so I've never liked that system. And especially when that group deals with students, I'd like to see it more of a, let's just say, athletics, let's say their budget is this, they have this many staff members, and they have this many students participating. Fine arts, their budget is this, they have this many staff members, and this many students participate. I'd like to see the cost per student that this district, your money is you put your money where you believe in, and how much money are we putting in the different programs. So when we come to our next budget workshop, I'd like to see that a little bit deeper into. I know that TASB, one of the things that they recommended was the curriculum and instruction, so it's good to see that you're talking about the professional learning department. So I'm anxious to see that at our next budget workshop too. But that doesn't concern me as much, as because that department doesn't directly, it's not on a campus dealing with a student. It's not a coach that's traveling on the weekends and all summer long. It's not, the directors and that are doing all this traveling. So I'd really like to see that in our budget. Because I think 10% in certain departments is detrimental to our students, whereas 10% or maybe even 15% in another department wouldn't be detrimental. And so I'd like to see more of based on student participation, because our goal is always not to impact a student. So I think that would be interesting numbers to look at.
Say it one more time. You're asking for
based on student participation. So like, let's say athletics, let's say they have a $10 million budget. They don't. Let's say they have a $10 million budget, and let's say they have 100 employees and they have 1,000 kids versus fine arts. Let's say they have a $5 million budget and they have 50 staff members, but they have 2,000 students. So I want to see what the comparison, how much are we paying per student in, the different departments? Like in special ed, the different departments that directly impact a student. I think that's a good way of looking at it, because I don't like the arbitrary 10% across the board, because some departments, their directors are already very lean. And so you don't want to punish people for running lean already. So that's just my 2 cents.
What we do with that is if we have the 10% across the board like it is, but at any time, if they need monies to support some programs that they have with students, definitely we amend the budget and provide them with the funding that they need. Student programs are not going to be hurt, and that's the way usually it works. You may cut 10% across the board, but anytime during the course of the year, there's money needed for students to travel, to compete. We're never going to deny that. We'll bring it to the board. We just want to work with a lean budget to start off the year and continue with that lean budget as far as we can go. But there may be amendments, and we will make amendments like we always do throughout the year based on what the kids need. And we will continue to do that and not hurt the kids in any shape or form. But at the next budget workshop, we've been talking all this time about cuts and reducing and closing positions. But at the next budget workshop, we're going to present now the salary increases proposals that we will have, because now we're going to go the opposite direction. Now we're going to go and see how much more we're going to need for those salary increases. So it's a balance. We've been talking about a lot of budget reductions that we've been making, but at the next budget workshop, then we're going to look at different models for salary increases for our staff, and that would put us now back up to see how much money we're going to need. And so that's why we're going to present 3 different models and see how much it's going to cost us per model. Ms. Garcia summarized the 1%, the 2%, and the 2.5%. And so that would also we need to take into account that it's going to cost us several $1 million to give a salary increase to our employees, which we will continue to work on that, because we feel that our employees deserve a salary increase. And we're going to be putting that into the budget. It will just be a matter of how much of an increase we are going to give our employees, but it will be part of our budget. And that will be presented at the next meeting on May the 6th.
Does anybody else have any more comments?
I do, Madam President.
Trustee Sutherland.
In the past, you were here, we did exactly that. It had the breakdown of costs in the various groups. The challenge you face is that the 6160, which is the basis of what we're using, it's being dispersed in so many different ways before you even get to the WADA, because that's also dispersed in different ways. As it was mentioned with the SHARs, as an example, something that goes in transportation, the various services that a special needs child gets based on what we're trying to do with SHARs. The same is true with our budget. You could have a child in athletics and a child in fine arts taking music, which we see them often, and then they're playing football in their uniform, marching in the band. So how do you differentiate? And that's tough, I get it. And I've always felt that way, that we should look at the child, how much it costs per child, but that's at our level, it's really getting down there. But I do think from a department level, the way we've done in the past, where you have those breakdowns of costs within the various departments in the budget workbook, is very, very helpful. It may be good to have this additional part, is to, again, to track as we go forward, hoping we come back, is how much did they actually, because I know the last meeting or two you said, while that was your target, 8% last year, some departments you maybe not got to 8%.
Correct.
Because you realize, to the point made, that they're already at the lowest possible level. Any less so, you're going to be amending your budget anyway. So why amend it when you can go ahead and take care of it now? And that's what you're doing, right?
Yes.
In many cases.
Yes, yeah, look, for example, transportation was one that they could not stay within that budget, and we had to bring an amendment for them. Facilities was another one. and typically those are the top two where we see that. I know we've, also for athletics, we've approved some trips, out-of-town trips, advancements for fine arts as well.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes an amendment to the budget, and we get those, we
Yes.
get to see them.
And that's our goal number 2, is to sustain all student programs. That's goal number 2 that we have in this budget.
And I think we'd all would like to see, I know I would, you know, I think your plan was phase 1, phase 2 have already taken place. Is that correct?
Correct.
Phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5, not yet. That will be for next year.
Correct.
That's your plan.
Right.
Is there going to be one in there, or maybe I missed it, where it talks about what we've done with central office administration on that?
They're all in the phases. They're embedded in all
They're
the
already
phases.
incorporated.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was one specific to central office positions.
I think that was phase 2.
Phase 2.
That was in phase 2. Yeah, and we'll get all the copies of the phases that, and show them to you, going back to phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and all the positions and.
But we still have, like phase 4, you see some central office positions in there as well.
And I think going forward, I don't see it being in the budget, but we used it as a basis of the budget, which was the TASB study. I think we, in addition to the facility education master plan, which we need to update, I think we need to look at how you're planning to move forward over the next 3 to 5 years in our staffing, and how you're gonna, is there gonna be in certain areas a freeze, in certain areas you're gonna grow? How are we gonna address that moving forward, I think needs to be really understood, so that we don't lose a handle on this and start hiring again when we think it's gonna get better.
No,
That's always a concern.
On that same note, I know Region 1 does a really, a great job of those comparisons, right? Central office correlated with
The spending.
enrollment.
Mhm.
And so I think that we know, and it's projected for everybody, that enrollment is going to continue to go down. So that way our trend lines are going in the same direction versus prior years where they were definitely going in opposite direction. So I think that's something that we can look at to ensure that we're not so top heavy when we know our enrollment is continually dropping. So.
Exactly, that's the point. I mean, you know, TASB comes in here, it's 287 positions, and we don't want to do a RIF, et cetera, but the reality of it, it's not exactly that, because you can't say, okay, I'm going to take a certain number in a certain area. You have to constantly be looking at the positions you need in the classroom and supporting the student and the teacher. And so that's going to vary. So even though we're seeing these actions taken now, you're going to have to make some real hard decisions about continuing to hire some individuals for retirees that are leaving to fill in the situation that those children need, those educational experiences, services in the classroom, correct? So you can't say it's a freeze per se and we're not hiring, because the reality that's going to be in play. But you're probably going to use what you've done 1 through 4 and probably 5 to identify which respective areas, correct?
Yes.
I just think, to Trustee Lopez's point, we have to get a handle of this so that we don't get behind the curve as we have here, looking at all these charts, and you see that we all saw it, but we weren't moving to accordingly start addressing staffing on a year-to-year basis to align to the fact that we're going to see a trend going down, no matter how much effort Mrs. Cavazos, everybody's putting in, all of us, trying to get folks to come to our school district. It's going to continue nationwide, and everybody knows it. So I think we got to be ahead of that and utilize some mechanism that we all can understand and be kept informed as we go forward, so we don't get ourselves in this situation again.
Yes.
Staffing is it's ongoing. We are evaluating it, and we'll continue to evaluate every year, especially because we all know that there is no new monies coming for 24-25, and so we have to be very lean with our budget and also review our staff.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
One question, just for clarification. I think Ms. Kittleman asked about the ESSER positions. We are offering our ESSER positions first, right, for any vacancies, or they are allowed to be rehired?
It depends on the need, the area of need, and what their credentials are. For example, like in this case with special education, that we had a match, but not necessarily there's no guarantee that we will find a match. Like, for example,
But principals haven't been told, like, you can't hire ESSER people, right?
No, we haven't told them that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The ESSER positions, were told that they were not gonna be renewed.
Right.
So, if we have a vacancy where they are able to fit in,
Qualify.
then we would allow
would
them
fill
to.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of it has to
I'm
do with
sorry, but what's the
certifications.
mechanism to making sure that that connection's made? They have to apply, right?
They-
They're not gonna be told, "Oh, we have this
Well,
spot.
they have to
And you have an
apply,
expert.
or we've already identified all of the ESSER positions and, what their areas of expertise are. So as we're going through these vacancies, we're able to determine whether it's a position that gets posted and people are able to freely apply internally, because we're posting internally first, or if we already have a qualified individual within the pool of people that can be transferred. But there are very methodical type, case-by-case based decisions that are made in these staffing decisions.
So how many are left in the ESSER folks with that
Yes, sir.
contract?
There was 45 left the last time I checked, minus these 3.
So around 42, más o menos?
Low 40s, high 30s, somewhere in there.
Thank you. Sorry.
And a lot of these positions that the staff, the ESSER funded staff have, depends on their certification and what we have vacant. Like the 3 that we were able to move, the 3 ESSER positions that we were able to move is because we need special ed teachers and they're special ed certified. So that worked perfectly for those 3. So, but we do want to make it available to them if there's vacancies to apply and to, that they're interested in those positions to be considered.
But in most cases, they're not gonna be doing what they're doing now. It's not gonna be similar to that, more than likely.
Oh, no.
Their
Right.
salary won't be the same.
It'll be a
Right.
Exactly, and the
different-
salary could be
position.
different.
It could be different, yeah.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we are, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee Saldivar and second by trustee Kittleman to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We are adjourned at 6:32 PM.
Minutes later, I thought.
I don't know, but